It was early morning, just as the sky began to break from its inky darkness into shades of muted blue and purple. The quiet hum of the ocean was broken only by the occasional splash of water, as Jack Hallahan's dive light cut through the depths below. The sea warden, his small boat anchored at the edge of Pelican's Reach, swayed gently with the current. Up above, the world carried on. But here, beneath the surface, in the cool, silent depths of the ocean, Jack's world was frozen in time. He had been diving for hours like he did every day, but today, it felt different. It wasn't the water that unsettled him. It was the familiar ache of desperation that clung to him, weighing him down deeper than the ocean ever could. Jack's chest tightened as he sifted through sand and shells, his hands shaking despite the practiced precision with which he moved. The sting of disappointment, so familiar now, burned in his heart. 4 endless years of searching, each dive, each inch of seabed carefully examined, yielding nothing. No sign of her, no trace. The ocean had swallowed his daughter whole, and Jack had spent every single day since then trying to convince himself he could find something, anything that would bring her back. But there was nothing. Not Mia's bright yellow swim cap bobbing on the surface like it had that fateful day. Not her gear, not her body, nothing but the crushing emptiness of the sea. Mia Callahan had been everything to him. She was his only child, a bright star on the Olympic horizon, her future limitless. At just 19, Mia had made the Olympic team for open water swimming, her talent undeniable. But to everyone who knew her, she was more than just a rising athlete. She was a force of nature, driven, dedicated, and determined to succeed. And she was just starting to make her mark when she disappeared. That morning, Jack had been at Crescent Bay Pier watching her swim the familiar route from Crescent Bay to Pelican's Reach and back, a 4-mile round trip that had become part of their daily routine. Jack had always followed closely in his boat, keeping watch. But that morning, Mia had insisted on swimming alone, something she had started doing more often in the months before her disappearance. She had grown independent. She had wanted space. "Dad, I need to do this on my own," she had said, her voice firm. "Wait for me at the dock. I'll be fine." And Jack, though he had hesitated, had agreed, reluctantly. But that day, something went wrong. Jack had searched the shoreline, his eyes scanning the waves, but Mia never came back. The hours stretched into a never-ending nightmare, each one filled with the frantic hope that she'd resurface, that she'd be there, waiting for him. He had called rescue teams, mobilized search parties, and scoured the coastline with a heart full of dread, but they found nothing. Weeks turned to months. The police called it a tragic accident, a drowning that had claimed the life of a talented swimmer. The sea, they said, was unpredictable, and even the most skilled swimmers could be swallowed by its depths. But Jack refused to accept it. The ocean may have taken her, but Jack wasn't ready to give up. He couldn't. Mia deserved more than that. She deserved to be brought home, to have a proper burial. She deserved peace. Each day he returned to the sea, diving deeper, searching for something, anything that would prove Mia was still out there. The water held its secrets, but Jack couldn't let go. Not yet. The sun was rising higher now, casting long shadows across the water. Jack's movements were slow and methodical, each one a repetition of the day before. The ocean stretched on forever, endless and cold, and yet Jack couldn't stop himself from looking. Today, though, something felt different. Jack's instincts had always guided him well on these searches. He knew these waters better than most. The currents, the reefs, the hidden dangers that even the most experienced swimmers might not survive. Yet, even with all his expertise, Jack had found nothing. His expertise had failed him, and he had to face the truth. Maybe Mia had been claimed by the sea, maybe there was nothing left to find. But today, a strange, restless feeling had settled in his gut, urging him farther than usual. A whisper in his mind that told him to keep going, that maybe he had missed something, something right here, just beyond his reach. His oxygen tank was running low as the minutes ticked by, but Jack ignored it. He kept searching. The dive light flickered across the seabed, casting odd shadows on the rocky ground below. A slight movement caught his eye, but when he reached out, his hands swept through empty water, brushing past a patch of seaweed. Nothing. He paused for a moment, his chest heaving with the effort, and noticed that the boat, the sea warden, was a lot farther away than he'd realized. He had drifted much further from his starting point than he intended. The boat was barely visible in the distance now, a speck on the horizon. With a sigh, Jack reluctantly began his ascent back to the surface. His body protested the long dive, his muscles burning with fatigue. He had been searching for hours. Maybe it was time to call it a day. But then something caught his eye again. Something small and distant, barely noticeable at first. A buoy. Not the blue water buoy that Mia had used to mark her training route, but a different one farther out than usual, and hardly ever checked. Curious, Jack swam toward. As he reached the buoy, he grabbed hold of its rusted metal frame, pulling himself up to catch his breath. It was a small relief, and he used the time to scan the horizon, allowing himself a moment to rest. But as he looked up at the structure towering above the waterline, something unusual caught his eye. Strapped to the buoy was an object, something out of place in the stillness of the ocean. Jack's heart skipped a beat. What was it? He pulled himself up on the buoy's platform, his fingers slipping against the corroded metal as he carefully approached the object. It was a camera, a GoPro, encased in a waterproof housing. The case was worn from exposure to the sea and weather, but there was something oddly familiar about it. He turned the case over in his hands, the weight of recognition slowly dawning on him. It was hers, Mia's. Jack's pulse quickened. This wasn't just any camera. It was the one he had given Mia before she started swimming alone, the one he had insisted she take with her on every swim, the camera that had captured her progress, the camera that had followed her through every mile, every training session, the camera he had begged her to take so he could see her progress, her dedication, her passion. But now, 4 years later, here it was, strapped to a buoy miles from her usual route, left abandoned in the ocean. Jack's hands shook as he carefully opened the waterproof case. The GoPro inside was intact, though the battery was dead. Still, this was the clue he had been searching for, the piece of the puzzle that might reveal the truth about what had happened to his daughter. Jack clutched the camera tightly, his breath coming in shallow gasps. It was Mia's, without a doubt. The sticker with the little blue dolphin and the letters MC on the back of the case was unmistakable. His heart raced, adrenaline spiking in his veins, as he fought to control the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He had always known deep down that the ocean couldn't just swallow her, that there had to be something more to her disappearance. And now, after 4 long years, this camera, the very one he had given her, was finally offering him the possibility of answer. He held the camera gently, the weight of it almost unbearable. This was a connection to his daughter, the only one he had left. He needed to know what happened to her. Every second mattered. As he swam back to the sea warden, his movements were more deliberate, his focus unwavering. His body screamed for rest, the muscles in his arms and legs aching from hours of diving. But nothing mattered now except getting this camera back to the surface, back to land. He would finally have something, some clue, something tangible that could tell him where Mia had gone, what had happened to her. The boat seemed impossibly far as he neared it, the water seeming to stretch farther than it should. His mind raced with possibilities, his thoughts darting between the camera in his hand and the endless expanse of the ocean. What would he find on it? Was there a clue? Was there a clue? Was there something, anything that would explain her disappearance? He reached the sea warden, at last, pulling himself aboard. The familiar creak of the boat's hull, bringing some measure of comfort, though it was overshadowed by the pounding in his chest. His old friend Dan was waiting on deck, his brow furrowed with concern, as he noticed the look on Jack's face. "You okay?" Dan asked, his voice low, but tinged with a sense of wariness. Jack didn't answer at first. Instead, he pulled the GoPro from his waterproof bag, the weight of it, still strange in his hands. The familiar logo on the casing, the same one that had marked Mia's gear for years, felt like a lifeline, a thread of hope. "Look what I found," Jack said, his voice hoarse with emotion. He handed the camera to Dan, who studied it for a moment, before his eyes widened in recognition. "Is this?" Dan began, trailing off as he turned the camera over in his hands. "It's Mia's, isn't it?" Jack nodded. He couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, the lump in his chest too heavy. All he could do was watch as Dan examined the camera, his fingers brushing over the familiar markings. "Jack," Dan started again, but his voice faltered. He didn't need to say more. They both knew what this meant. "Let's get back to shore," Jack said, his voice steady but laced with an edge of urgency. "I need to get this to the police. I need them to look at it. Whatever's on it, I need to know." The drive to the police station felt like it took an eternity. Jack's fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were white. The camera, placed carefully on the passenger seat next to him, seemed to hum with a quiet, eerie energy. His mind was racing, imagining what he would find on the footage. What if there was nothing? What if it was all just a coincidence? What if Mia had simply gotten caught in the currents and drowned, as they had originally thought? But that thought, as familiar as it was, didn't sit well with Jack anymore. He refused to believe it. Mia wasn't the type of person to just vanish without a trace. She wasn't the type to give up without a fight. And he knew that there had to be more to her disappearance. This camera was the key. When he arrived at the Crescent Bay police station, he almost didn't stop the car. He had no time for formalities or waiting. He needed answers. Now, he rushed inside, almost colliding with the officer at the front desk. "Mr. Callahan," she said, recognizing him immediately. "You found something?" Jack nodded, barely able to contain his excitement. "Mia's camera. I need it examined. There might be something on it that can tell us what happened." The officer quickly called Detective Morgan, who had been assigned to Mia's case from the... Morgan's gruff voice came over the phone as Jack was led to a small, sterile room with rows of computers and forensic equipment. "Jack," Morgan said, his voice thick with disbelief. "You're saying this camera, this is Mia's?" "Yes," Jack replied. "I found it strapped to a buoy miles out from her usual route. I need you to look at it. I need answers." Morgan's voice softened. "I'll have our techs look at it right away. Stay here." The forensic technician, a man named Ethan Parker, entered the room moments later. He was in his 30s, sharp-eyed and focused, but there was a weight of concern in his posture as he shook Jack's hand. "Let's see what we've got," Ethan said, carefully removing the camera from its waterproof housing. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he watched. This was the moment that could change everything. It didn't take long for Ethan to access the footage from the GoPro. Jack stood, anxiously tapping his fingers on the desk, unable to sit still as the technician worked. The room was silent, except for the faint clicking of the keyboard and the soft hum of the computer. Finally, Ethan looked up at Jack. "We're in. I've got the footage. Let's see what we have." The first clip appeared on the screen. Jack's heart stopped. There she was, Mia, alive, smiling, adjusting the camera on the buoy. She looked so much like she had 4 years ago, bright, energetic, full of life. His throat tightened as her voice echoed through the speakers. "Testing, testing. This is Mia Callahan. Today's training session. Let's see if I can push myself further." Jack could hear the wind whipping around her, but it was unmistakably her voice. She was still in the water, still doing what she loved. The camera tilted slightly as Mia adjusted it, and then the footage continued, showing her treading water beside the buoy. Day 42 of Olympic training. Mia's voice came through again. "Coach says my endurance is improving, but my turns still need work." She laughed, a soft, almost nervous sound. "Sometimes, I wonder if I'm cut out for this. The pressure is intense. I'm nowhere near the level of the top competitors. If I even make it to the games, will I just embarrass myself?" Jack's chest tightened. He had no idea Mia felt that way. Those doubts, the uncertainty she had kept hidden from him. He replayed the clip, his hands trembling as the screen flickered to the next section of footage. Mia was speaking again, but this time, she seemed distracted. Her attention was drawn to something, or someone off camera. "Oh, hello," she said, her voice suddenly warmer. Jack's stomach twisted as a figure appeared on the screen, a young man with dark hair and a broad smile. "Hey there," the young man didn't expect to see anyone out this far. Mia smiled in return. "Just training," she replied. "I'm Mia Callahan." The young man, his face partially obscured by the water droplets on the lens, leaned in closer. "That's incredible. You're really pushing it, swimming way out here alone." "I'm training for the Olympics," Mia explained, her voice filled with a quiet pride. "Open water swimming." The young man's voice was filled with admiration. "No way. That's amazing. Are you going to be famous?" Mia laughed softly, the sound echoing with self-deprecation. "Hardly. I'm new to the elite level. Haven't made a big media splash yet. Still flying under the radar. Still, you look like a pro to me," the man said. "Hey, want a race?" Mia's eyes lit up with excitement. "Sure," she said, her face breaking into a grin. "Where to?" The young man pointed off into the distance. "How about to that outcropping in the back?" The two swimmers disappeared from the frame, the camera continuing to record as it floated in the water. The next few minutes were quiet, the ocean moving in calm ripples across the frame. But then, in the distance, A speedboat appeared. It crossed the frame, far off in the distance, moving toward the horizon. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He leaned closer, his eyes scanning the foot. The boat's logo was partially visible, distorted by the fisheye lens of the GoPro, but still clear enough to make out a wave and text beneath it. "Can you zoom in?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. Ethan nodded, focusing the image. The text became clear. "Ocean Elite Marine," Jack murmured under his breath, his mind racing. The logo. He had seen it before at the marina just that morning. Ethan paused. "The video. That's the company. I can look up more details. We can start investigating that." Jack nodded, his hand shaking as he pulled out his phone. The pieces were beginning to fit together. The video had opened a door Jack hadn't realized was even there. He had been searching for years in the dark, hoping for some shred of evidence that would shed light on Mia's disappearance, and now he had it. The logo of Ocean Elite Marine, a company that, until that moment, had been nothing more than a name on the horizon, a name that blended into the background of his daily life. Now, it was something else entirely, something dark, something that had a hand in the disappearance of his daughter. Jack's mind raced as he studied the footage again. The young man in the video, the one who had raced with Mia, seemed so casual, so friendly, but Jack's gut told him that something wasn't right. The way the man spoke, the way he suggested the race, the way he had come out of nowhere, it all felt too orchestrated. There was something planned in his appearance, something too calculated about the encounter. Jack's eyes moved back to the screen, watching as the boat sped off into the distance, leaving nothing but ripples in the water. "Can you track that logo?" Jack asked Ethan, his voice sharp, urgent. Ethan nodded, already typing into his computer. "I'll pull up the detail. Ocean Elite Marine is based locally, and they're known for sponsoring athletes, mostly in water sports. But I'll dig deeper." Jack's heart was pounding in his chest. Everything had shifted. For 4 years, he had told himself that Mia had drowned, that the sea had taken her. The footage from the GoPro had thrown that belief into chaos. If Mia had been training for the Olympics, if she had been swimming alone, why was there a random swimmer out there with her? Why was he there? And why was she so willing to engage him? And what about the boat? Ethan paused for a moment, scanning the database. "Here we go," he said, his voice steady but filled with curiosity. "Ocean Elite Marine. They're a relatively new company, started about 5 years ago. They specialize in providing water sports equipment and transportation for athletes. They're heavily involved in sponsorships, mostly for local swimmers, divers, and sailors. But there's one thing that stands out." Jack leaned in. "What's that?" Ethan clicked a few more buttons. "The founder, Grant Whitmore. He's been linked to a few controversies, some financial problems, shady business practices, and there are rumors about him, especially involving women." The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. His mind went back to the footage, back to the moment when he had seen Mia smiling at the camera. "I'm training for the Olympics." She had been so young, so full of promise, and now, 4 years later, everything was beginning to make sense. Whitmore was involved in the same circles as the young man from the footage. Maybe he was more than just a friendly face. Jack's gut twisted. "Get me everything you can about him," Jack said, his voice tight with emotion. "I need to know who this guy is, and I need to know why Mia was out there." The more Jack learned about Grant Whitmore, the more disgusted he became. Whitmore had built a thriving business from the ground up, but the reports were disturbing. His company was lucrative, yes, but it had a darker side. Whispers about how Whitmore had used his wealth and influence to target young athletic women, specifically swimmers, grew louder with each passing year. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that Whitmore had been keeping tabs on Mia from the very start. She was his type, young, talented, and vulnerable. A rising star who had shown promise, and yet for all her potential, she had been swept away by a predator masquerading as a benefactor. Jack spent the next few days combing through the information Ethan provided, going over every scrap of evidence they could find. Whitmore had several high-end properties along the coast. He owned a yacht, the Avalon, which was registered under Ocean Elite Marine, and the speedboat Mia had seen in the video was associated with his name. The dots connected in a way that made Jack's skin crawl. But the most disturbing part of all this was the way Whitmore operated. He was methodical, meticulous, and he had surrounded himself with a network of loyal enforcers who helped him maintain control. He didn't just run a business, he ran an empire built on manipulation and fear, and Mia had become part of that empire. Jack's focus shifted to the mysterious young man in the video. He had to find out who he was, and why he had been so interested in Mia. Jack contacted his old friend Tom, who had once trained with him in the competitive swimming world, asking for any leads on the mysterious swimmer. Tom was quick to provide some details. "That guy's name is Martin Whitmore," Tom said, when Jack called him Grant's son. "He's been around the local swimming scene for a while, though he's mostly kept to the sidelines. But I've heard rumors. Some say he's been helping his father recruit talented swimmers." Jack's heart skipped a beat. Martin Whitmore. The name was familiar now. He had seen the man in the footage, the one who had appeared out of nowhere, suggesting the race, the one who had pulled Mia into his world, a world Jack didn't fully understand. "Are you sure about this?" Jack asked, his voice shaking. "Martin Whitmore. He's been recruiting athletes for his father." Tom's voice was low, almost hesitant. "I've heard things, Jack, and you're not the first person to have suspicions. Martin's always been around, but he's kept a low profile. He's not the most reputable guy." That was enough for Jack. It was time to confront the truth, no matter how ugly it was. Jack couldn't sit still any longer. His mind raced with the information he had gathered. Mia's camera had opened the door, but now Jack needed to see the truth for himself. He needed to confront Martin Whitmore, find out what he knew, and understand just how deep this rabbit hole went. He called Detective Morgan again, urgency in his voice. "I need to meet with Martin Whitmore," Jack said. "I think he knows some. I think he's been involved with Mia's disappearance." Morgan hesitated. "Jack, we're working on this, but you need to be careful. If Whitmore is involved, we're dealing with someone dangerous. He's not just a businessman. He's got connections. I can't let you go after him alone." "I don't care," Jack replied, his voice cutting through the tension. "I've been looking for her for 4 years. I won't stop now. You have to help me." Morgan sighed, clearly conflicted, but Jack could hear the resolve in his voice. "All right, I'll arrange a meet, but we'll do this the right way. We'll have officers with you, and we'll make sure you're safe." The meeting with Martin Whitmore was set. Jack knew it was a risk, but he couldn't back down now. He had come this far, the truth was within reach, and nothing was going to stop him from getting it. When Jack arrived at the meeting place, a secluded marina outside Crescent Bay, the air felt thick with tension. The place was quiet, eerily still, and Jack could feel the weight of the past 4 years pressing down on him. Martin arrived in his typical nonchalant manner, his smile more menacing than friendly. Jack's blood boiled, but he held himself in check. He couldn't let anger cloud his judgment now. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. "You came all this way just to talk to me, Jack?" Martin asked, his tone condescending. "You should have known better. My father's been running this business for years. You don't think we're untouchable?" Jack stood his ground. "You took her. You took my daughter." Martin's expression flickered, but only for a moment. "You don't understand, Jack. This is bigger than you. It's bigger than your daughter. You're just a small part of the game." Jack's fist clenched. He stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with raw emotion. "Tell me where Mia is. Tell me what happened to her, and maybe you can still save yourself." Martin's smile faded. He stepped back, his face suddenly cold. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Jack, but I'm afraid this ends here. You'll never find her. She's gone, just like the rest of..." Before Jack could react, a group of armed men appeared from the shadows, surrounding him. The air was thick with menace, but Jack didn't flinch. He knew this was the moment he would either break free or be swallowed by the darkness. The men closed in on Jack, their faces hard and unfeeling, but Jack's eyes never left Martin. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from something far more powerful: rage. He had been searching for years, relentless, drowning in the depths of his own grief. And now, standing in front of the man who had taken his daughter, the truth was finally within reach. But would it be enough to bring Mia back? "Enough of this," Jack spat, his voice low but sharp. "Tell me where she is. You can keep hiding behind your wealth and your power, but I'm done letting you call the shots. I've been to hell and back looking for her, and I won't stop until I find her. So you can either help me or you can go down with your father." Martin's face darkened, his cocky attitude faltering for just a moment, but then he straightened up, pushing back the brief flicker of uncertainty. He sneered at Jack, shaking his head slowly. "You think you have any idea what you're dealing with? My father's empire, the lives he's touched, it's all bigger than your little search." "Mia?" She was just a tool, a means to an end, and now she's part of something far more important. Jack clenched his fists, his knuckles white. If you think for a second I'm going to let you get away with this, you're wrong. You have no idea who you're dealing with either. I'll make sure the whole world knows what you did. The men surrounding Jack tightened their grip on their weapons, but Jack wasn't afraid. He had already decided that he wasn't going to back down. He wouldn't let Martin, or anyone else, keep his daughter in the shadows. Mia deserved justice, and Jack was determined to give it to her, no matter the cost. But before he could react, the sound of sirens pierced the air, cutting through the tension like a knife. Jack's head snapped toward the entrance of the marina, and he could see a convoy of police cars, lights flashing, pulling into the lot. The tactical team was here. Morgan's voice came through on Jack's radio, sharp and commanding. "Jack, stay where you are. We've got this. We've got Whitmore cornered." Martin's face twisted with fear, and for the first time Jack saw a crack in his confident facade. Martin backed away, looking toward the horizon, where the police had arrived. "You can't do this," Martin muttered, his voice barely a whisper, his hands shaking. "I already have," Jack said coldly, as he turned toward the approaching law enforcement, a mix of relief and apprehension flooding through him. This was it. This was his chance to finally bring Mia's story to life. The tactical officers moved quickly, surrounding the area, and before Jack knew it, Martin was being taken into custody. His once confident stance was shattered, replaced with panic and confusion, as he was dragged away. "You can't do this," Martin shouted, his voice breaking. "You don't know who you're messing with, my father." "We know exactly who we're messing with," a police officer snapped, his grip firm on Martin's arm as he shoved him into the back of the patrol car. Jack stood there, watching the scene unfold in front of him. It felt surreal. For years, he had envisioned this moment, but now that it was happening, it didn't feel like the victory he had imagined. There was still a heavy weight in his chest, still a hollowness that couldn't be filled just by capturing Martin. It wasn't over yet. There were still so many unanswered questions. Where was Mia? What had they done to her? A familiar voice pulled Jack out of his thoughts. "You did good, Jack," Detective Morgan said, walking up beside him. "You uncovered a big piece of this. Whitmore's empire is about to fall apart." Jack's eyes flickered to Morgan. "I don't care about Whitmore's empire. I care about my daughter, and I'll do whatever it takes to bring her back." Morgan nodded, his expression grim. "We're doing everything we can. We'll search every inch of his properties, every last lead. You're not alone in this." The next few hours felt like a blur. The police raided Whitmore's offices, his yacht, and his properties. Anything that might yield a clue about Mia's whereabouts. Jack was there with them, every step of the way, refusing to leave, refusing to be pushed aside. His resolve was unwavering. Mia had been taken from him, and Jack wasn't going to rest until she was safely back in his arms. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over Crescent Bay, Jack found himself standing in front of the marina once again. The once familiar place now felt foreign, a stark reminder of the chaos that had swept through his life over the past 4 years. His eyes flicked to the harbor, where boats bobbed gently in the water. His heart ached as he thought about Mia, about everything she had been through. A sharp ringing of Jack's phone broke the silence, and he quickly answered. "Jack Callahan," he said, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "Jack, it's Morgan," came the familiar voice. "We've got a lead. We found something. You need to get down to the marina now." Without hesitation, Jack slammed his car into gear, his heart pounding as he sped toward the marina. The fear was back, the old familiar dread that never quite went away. Had they found Mia? Was she alive? When Jack arrived at the marina, the scene was more chaotic than he had expected. Officers and detectives were gathered around a secluded corner of the docks, speaking in hushed voices. Jack's stomach churned with anticipation as he pushed his way through the crowd. Morgan approached him, his face taut with urgency. "We've found her, Jack," he said quietly, his voice filled with both relief and concern. "She's alive." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "Where is she? Is she okay?" Morgan gave him a hard look. "She's alive, but she's not okay. You need to be prepared for what you're going to see." Jack nodded, his breath catching in his chest, as he followed Morgan to the small boat where Mia was being held. She was sitting on the edge, her eyes wide, and though she was alive, her once bright demeanor was replaced by a hollow look. Her clothes were torn, and she looked thin, gaunt even, as if the life had been drained from her. "Mia," Jack whispered, his voice cracking as he stepped closer. She looked up, and for a moment, her expression flickered with recognition. Then the walls she had built around herself began to crumble. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stood shakily, her legs weak, and threw herself into Jack's arms. "I'm here, sweetheart," Jack murmured, holding her tightly. "I've got you. You're safe now." Mia trembled in his embrace. "Dad, I thought you'd given up on me. I thought you'd stopped looking." "No," Jack said fiercely. "I never stopped. I never will. I'm here, and I'm never letting you go again." The following days were a blur of recovery and adjustment. Mia was taken to the hospital for medical treatment, but physically, she would heal. Mentally, however, the scars would take much longer to fade. The horrors she had endured over the past 4 years were etched into her mind, and Jack could see it in her eye. She wasn't the same young woman who had left for training all those years ago, but they were together now. Jack had his daughter back, and that was enough to start rebuilding. As the investigation into Ocean Elite Marine and Grant Whitmore's operation continued, more victims came forward. Athletes who had been exploited and forced into a life of captivity and manipulation. Whitmore's empire had been exposed, and Jack's relentless pursuit of the truth had brought it all crashing down. For the first time in years, Jack could finally breathe. The search was over. Mia was free. They would face the long road of healing together. But for now, Jack focused on the one thing that mattered. His daughter was safe, and their story was just beginning. The world seemed to slow down after Mia was brought to safety. The frenzy of the rescue operation, the police action, and the sudden flurry of media attention all blended together, leaving Jack with a sense of surreal disbelief. It was one thing to search endlessly for answers, but it was entirely different to have them land in his lap, to actually have his daughter back, even if she wasn't the same girl who had left for a morning swim all those years ago. As Mia recovered physically, the deeper wounds began to reveal themselves. Nightmares plagued her, her body trembling in her sleep as she relived the horrors she had endured. Jack sat by her side every night, his presence a constant reassurance, but he knew too well that healing would take time. It wasn't just the trauma Mia carried with her. It was the damage done to everything they had once known. Her future, once so bright with promise and ambition, now felt clouded with uncertainty. Mia had been stripped of her dreams, her control and the promise of something better. Her Olympic aspirations, the swimming career that had defined her, were no longer just dreams. They were remnants of a life that seemed distant, almost unreachable. Jack didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in years he knew that the journey they had ahead of them, no matter how long and difficult, would be theirs to take together. In the weeks that followed Mia's rescue, Jack and Mia spent hours talking, sharing the moments of fear, of pain, but also the moments of resilience. Jack couldn't pretend that everything was going to be okay overnight, but he could promise her that he would be there every step of the way. As the investigation into Ocean Elite Marine unfolded, the police uncovered more about the organization's illegal activities. Whitmore's company was more than just a sponsor. It was a front for a deeply criminal operation, and its ties to human trafficking ran deeper than anyone had anticipated. The discovery of Whitmore's long-running scheme shook the local athletic community to its core. His influence had reached far beyond what anyone had imagined, and Jack knew that it would take years for the damage to be fully understood. The police were able to link Whitmore and his son Martin to multiple cases of missing athletes. The story made national news, with investigations opening into every athlete who had vanished over the years, most of them unknown to the general public, but well known in the close-knit world of professional swimming. Jack's role in bringing Whitmore's empire to light was acknowledged, but for Jack there was only one victory that mattered: the return of his daughter. As the trial for Grant Whitmore and his associates approached, Jack and Mia remained in the background, allowing the legal system to take its course. They had done what they could. The truth was out. Justice would be served, but Jack knew that for him and Mia, true justice could only be found in the peace they would build together. The trial was a long and emotional process, but in the end, Whitmore was convicted on multiple counts, including human trafficking, conspiracy, and kidnapping. His company, Ocean Elite Marine, was shut down, its assets seized. The story of Mia Callahan, once a hopeful young swimmer who disappeared without a trace, became a symbol of courage and survival. Mia, despite the years of captivity, was determined not to let this define her forever. She spoke at the trial, her voice steady and clear, sharing her story with the world. It wasn't easy, but Mia knew she had to. She had lost so much, but in the face of it all she was finding a way to rebuild. She wouldn't let her past define her. She would rise above it. Months passed, and life slowly began to feel normal again. Jack and Mia spent their days reconnecting, rediscovering the simple joys that had been stolen from them for so long. Mia started therapy, working through the trauma, and slowly, with Jack's unwavering support, she began to regain a sense of control over her own life. Jack found comfort in the small things, teaching Mia how to dive again, watching her slowly rebuild her passion for the sport. She wasn't sure if she wanted to compete again, but she wasn't closing that door either. It wasn't about the Olympics anymore. It was about rediscovering who she was, about feeling whole again. Swimming was no longer her identity. It was just part of the journey. Jack, too, found his way back to his company. His diving business had suffered in the years that Mia was gone, but he started to rebuild, starting small, focusing on what truly mattered: safety, integrity, and helping others. He had learned in the most painful way possible that nothing in life was guaranteed. He would make sure that every dive, every operation, every moment moving forward would be meaningful. It was a quiet afternoon when Jack and Mia stood at Crescent Bay Pier together. The ocean stretched out before them, calm and inviting, the waves gently lapping at the shore. Mia was dressed in her old swim gear, looking out at the water with a thoughtful expression. Jack stood beside her, watching as she took in the scene. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" he asked softly. Mia nodded, her lips curling into a small smile. "Yeah, I think I might try again. Not for the Olympics, not for anyone else, just for me, just to see if I can." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, giving her a gentle squeeze. "I'll be with you every stroke of the way, Mia, no matter where it takes you." Mia looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and strength. "Thanks, Dad. I don't know what I'd do without you." "You won't have to," Jack replied, his voice filled with conviction. "We're in this together, and we always will be." As they walked toward the water, side by side, Jack knew that they had both been through hell, but they had come out the other side, together, and that was more than enough. The ocean had taken much from Jack and Mia, but it had also given them something back. It had given them the strength to survive, the determination to fight, and the promise of a new beginning. As they swam together, each stroke was a reminder of their journey. And no matter what lay ahead, Jack knew one thing for sure: Mia had come home, and together, they would face whatever the future held.